Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are starting a new series, which is Finding My Letterboxd 4.
Oh no. Letterbox. My four all-time favorite films.
My four favorite films. Jesus, this is hard. That's really hard.
That is a damn near impossible thing for me to pick four films. But I'll do it now. Four films.
Now, a lot of people know of the Letterboxd top 4, kind of as a staple, really, on Letterboxd. It's kind of a whole it's kind of the first thing you see as soon as you go onto your profile, and so it is kind of a really big deal. And so for the longest time, I think for me there was a couple different reasons why just for forever I never had anything in my letterbox 4. I never actually put anything in there. One of the reasons, because it's just so hard when you love movies and you just love cinema. It's hard to kind of just put 4 and say these are my 4 favorite. And I think the other reason that I didn't really ever do like a real letterbox 4 is because I kind of always knew what my 4 films would be if I had to put 4 films there, and I knew that it would be kind of, I don't want to say boring picks, like they're all good picks, but I think the easiest way is if I just show you. So here are what I have finally, as of a couple months ago, I finally put in my Letterboxd 4, and this is what it is. Now, you may notice kind of a little bit of a trend here of Get Out from 2017, and then 3 other films that were just my top 3 films of 2019. And so, for me, it's kind of weird looking at it and being like, oh, I love movies and I love cinema and all of this, and my Letterboxd 4 are all within a 2-year span of each other, with 3 of them all being from the same year that like I really fell in love with going to the movies. And so at least I guess there is a little bit of that story there for me, right? I can look at that and I can say 2019 was really that year that I fell in love with going to the movies, going to the cinema. But it just, I don't know. In a weird way, it always is kind of. I guess it does look kind of nice, but it's. I've always felt like maybe this isn't really my true Letterboxd 4 as much as these are just kind of the easy picks. And so yeah, so I kind of want to start this series of going and looking at pretty much rewatching movies that I know that I've given 5. I mean, the first requirement is these have to be 5 out of 5 star movies. As much as I can love a 4-star or a 4.5-star movie, if I don't give it that 5-star rating, then it's just not going to make the cut, right, for the Letterboxd top 4. And so I think this series is really just going to be going back, and it's going to be watching a bunch of movies that I have given 5 stars to see if on additional watches, on some of them maybe it's the second time I've ever watched it. On some of these movies maybe it'll be the 50th time I've watched it, and just kind of watch these and see if they can bump out and they can take a spot. But before we really get into that side of it, of rewatching movies to see if they can crack into the Letterboxd 4, I want to start by reviewing all of the movies in my Letterboxd 4 and kind of explaining why they're there and what makes them kind of a special movie to me. And so for me, starting this series, there was no other option for what the first movie review was gonna be in this series.
Get out.
Sorry, man.
Okay. Get out!
Yo!
Yeah!
Yo! Chill, man.
Get out!
Chill!
Chill, man! Chill! Get the fuck out of here!
Chris and his girlfriend Rose go upstate to visit her parents for the weekend. At first, Chris reads the family's overly accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to deal with their daughter's interracial relationship. But as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries lead him to a truth that he never could have imagined. The film stars Daniel Kaluuya as Chris Washington, Allison Williams as Rose Armitage, Bradley Whitford as Dean Armitage, Catherine Keener as Missy Armitage, and Lil Rel Howery as Rod Williams. Get Out is a horror thriller from 2017, directed by Jordan Peele in his directorial debut. The film is rated R for violence, bloody images, and language including sexual references. Jordan Peele won for Best Original Screenplay at the 2018 Academy Awards. Get Out was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Jordan Peele, and Best Actor for Daniel Kaluuya. And then before we get too into this review, I do want to mention that in this review, in a lot of a lot of the videos I've posted on this channel, I've very much stayed away from spoilers. I have not talked about spoilers at all. In this video, because it's this series more so than other series, it's a series just talking about movies that I truly love and the reason why I really love them. So it's going to be really hard to just not do spoilers in these videos. So I'm just giving you a heads up now that there will be a spoiler section at the end of this review. I will put, if you look, at the bottom, there's kind of the chapters, of the video that breaking up the sections. You will see the section that is going to be the spoiler section, and I will give it a good enough advance warning when we get there. So if you haven't seen this film at that point, please leave, go watch the movie, because it is an incredible movie. And if you haven't been spoiled at this point, or you don't really know how what happens in the movie, please don't see any reviews or anything like that kind of ruin a lot of the surprises in it. But obviously, if you have seen the film, which a lot of you probably have at this point, it's I guess we're 8 years old, this movie, and so a lot of people have seen it at this point. But obviously at that point, feel free to stay around for the spoiler section. But again, if you haven't seen the movie, I really do recommend that you go see it before you watch me or any other YouTube video that kind of is spoiling the end of that video. So the first thing I want to talk about this film, the first highlight, it would be criminal to not start with Jordan Peele, by talking about obviously, this is his movie, this is his directorial debut, this was his vision, and I think the best way to describe really what this film was and what this film, the moment it was at that time, is just understanding, maybe now, if this is, if you've heard of Jordan Peele, of Jordan Peele, there's a good chance a lot of newer people in this kind of space that like watching movies, or like just kind of internet culture, I guess, there's a good chance that a lot of people, that they know of Jordan Peele through his directing before they know of Jordan Peele through his comedy, with his sketches with Keegan-Michael Key and the Key and Peele sketches. Again, that's at this point in my life, that was what Key and Peele, that's what Jordan Peele was that and I had seen probably, I don't want to say like every sketch that they had, but just about every sketch they had on YouTube, with the big one, the first one obviously being obviously the substitute teacher Key and Peele sketch is the biggest, I think. I guess, I don't know, I could have looked this up, but for me, I feel like that's the biggest sketch. But for me, when I first discovered Jordan Peele, it was in high school. We were watching one of our teachers put on the East vs. West Bowl skit, and that was one of the first kind of times that I had discovered Jordan Peele, discovered his comedy. And so I knew that I always liked this person for his comedy, for that side of him. And then all of a sudden, when this trailer drops and you're seeing one of the guys from that comedy group is doing a horror movie, and it was so kind of out of left field, and it was so weird and didn't make sense. But then it's just, and now that once you've seen the film, and you've seen a lot of his interviews that he's done, kind of talking about how he decided to do kind of, now he's kind of branched into like a horror director, how that came to be, and he's kind of talked about how kind of comedy and horror is kind of about making someone laugh and making someone scared. It's kind of the same objective. It's kind of the same goal, but it's just kind of a darker, a more twisted way of going about it. And so he's kind of had a lot of these interviews where he kind of feels like it's a very similar objective, a very similar goal. And so it's something that he knew that he always could do, of really kind of transitioning and really directing horror films. And so I'm glad that he had that vision and was really able to do this, because again, this is just a phenomenal film, and none of it would have been possible without him as the visionary behind the film. It just would not have worked, I think, with a lot of other directors. This was always kind of had to have been from the mind of Jordan Peele. This was something that was like his vision, and he really executed on it. And then the other thing is, again, I think a lot of what set up Get Out as kind of this big kind of cultural moment, honestly, back in 2017, was how unprepared I think so many people were going into the movie. That people were excited about the movie, but then it was just, the movie did an excellent job of marketing itself and getting you in, but then kind of not being exactly what you thought the movie was going to be. And I think a big part of that was the trailer of this film. Admittedly, I have not gone back and watched the trailer in many years. I'm sure maybe I watched it once or twice, maybe after the movie came out, but what I do remember back when the trailer before the movie, I do remember it being confusing and making no sense, and looking at it and being like, what is happening? And there's so many shots of the movie that are in the trailer, but they're cut up in weird ways, and so maybe the trailer might have been showing a decent amount, but it was in such an order that you had no idea what was really happening in the trailer, but you got a sense of the vibe, you got a sense of the atmosphere that the film was going to have, and that was enough to really kind of get you into the theater, to get you into a seat. And again, that's why I love a trailer that can get you interested without revealing too much. And the problem is, obviously nowadays, it's just trailers reveal way too much, and so it's gotten to the point that there used to be a time in my life where I loved watching trailers, and I've really gotten to the point now where I just kind of avoid trailers at all costs, because for every one trailer that is amazing as Get Out's is at kind of building the intrigue and building your interest in the movie, there's so many other trailers that just spoil way too much of the plot or show, or I mean, especially with horror movies, I think the ultimate example, I mean, there's going to be so many that I can think of, but I think the ultimate example is like both the Nun movies, where there's like these big, massive, like, these are kind of big climactic scares in the movie, like, this is what we're building to, and then they put them in the trailer. And so then when you're in the movie and this is like kind of the big climax, or this is kind of one of the biggest, the best scares or whatever, but you've seen it, you know what's coming, you know exactly where to look, you know what's happening. And so there's so many movies like that where I think they spoil the scare, especially for horror movies. And so again, for every Get Out trailer, there's so many The Nun trailers that kind of just spoil too much of the movie, that make it not enjoyable. So I will say that is kind of another extra point of the Get Out trailer put me in a mind state. It put me in a kind of a frame of reference going into the theater, and then the movie delivered something, I don't want to say completely different, but it kind of it answered the questions that you had of the trailer, but it was also enough of a detour that, like, you didn't feel like you just saw the whole movie in the trailer, which I think was, an incredible thing. The next thing that we have to talk about is the acting in this film. Obviously, Daniel Kaluuya is the star. He is the standout.
I don't know. I just thought that if I did, it'd make it real.
Very rare, I think, that there are movies where I see a movie and one of the first thoughts I have is that actor, someone delivered a performance that's so good that my takeaway is I am a forever fan and I am going to watch everything that they do. Like, I am this into that actor. Like, I will be seated for their future. There's so many movies where even, like, there's great performances in every movie. Like, I guess I don't really want to give examples per se, but, like, you see a movie and you think, like, oh, that's, really good performance, that's really awesome, but, maybe I'm not, like, so sold to the point that it's like I am going to see everything they do. That's how I was with Daniel Kaluuya. His performance was just so amazing in this. Obviously, the standout scene, I'm gonna probably put it in a couple times in this video, of just the first time that he's again, I don't want to get into too much of the spoilers right now, but if you've seen the film, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The scene with him and Catherine Keener, and he's just sitting there, blank stare, tears rolling down his eyes. It's just phenomenal acting. And then the other thing that you have to kind of give him credit is his chemistry with Rose, his chemistry with Allison Williams' character. So we'll move on to Allison Williams. The way that what she does in this film, the way that she is able to, again, their chemistry as this couple, you totally are into, you buy into this relationship, you buy into, this couple, and it's one of those things that's it's very easy very early in the film that you're able to see her, again, just this relationship. You see kind of the scene as they're driving up and they're talking to the police officer. You see her stepping up and defending her man, as she calls him, and you just instantly you feel this love, you feel this connection, you feel this bond that these two characters have, to the point that you're so sold on just them as a couple. You're sold on their relationship, and you're sold on their journey that they're going to go through through this film. And again, that works so well, again, just from the character standpoint and from the performance standpoints of both Daniel Kaluuya and Allison Williams. Just excellent lead performances in this film that really have you just rooting for them as a couple to, as the description says, as this film kind of takes some darker turns, you're really rooting for them to both kind of make it out of this situation that they find themselves in. And then the last, bit of acting, the actors that I want to talk about is just all of the Armitages. It's all of, Bradley Whitford and Catherine Keener, and that I didn't mention in the cast list because I didn't want to list the whole cast. I very easily could have, but Caleb Landry Jones, he has fewer scenes than the parents do, but he is still also a very critical part of the Armitage family and their role in what they're doing. And it's just the entire time, as soon as you get to the Armitage house, you can tell something is off. You can tell something is happening here, but you don't really know what's going on. And again, it's just the acting from all three of them all coming together to just create this sense of tension, to create this atmosphere that makes you uncomfortable and on the edge of your seat. And again, that is something that I think some movies, tension is oftentimes, it's kind of a hard thing to really execute perfectly. And I think that this film does an excellent job of executing that, and a lot of that, it comes from the performances. Now, there is one other performance that I do want to talk about, but it's kind of more so a performance that veers into another a category for me, and it's the humor of the film.
How can I get in trouble for patting down an old lady? It's standard procedure. Gary just thinks an elderly bitch is elderly. She can't hijack no motherfucking plane.
See, wait. I know you laughing.
But I'm serious, man. The next 9/11 is gonna be on some geriatric shit.
Straight up.
So when we're talking about the humor of the film, obviously we're talking about Lil Rel Howery's character, and kind of the as he serves as the audience conduit. He serves as the member of the he really is one of us. Like, he is almost watching the movie, and he is saying the things that we want to be saying out loud. Like, he is our connection to the film, which I believe, if I remember right, I remember seeing interviews with Jordan Peele and with Lil Rel Howery where they're talking about that, where they're talking about how that is the goal of his character, is he really is the conduit. He really is the person that is just stepping into our shoes in this situation, and he's reacting the way that we would react and the way that we're saying that, because he's seeing things that are happening, and he's just calling it how he's seeing it and saying, like, whoa, like, think about this for a second. Let's take a step back and let's analyze the situation. And so again, what he's doing, again, not only is he just kind of being that voice of the audience, but he's doing it in a very hysterical way, and the point that bringing so much kind of, I think, needed humor to this film, that I guess it's not necessarily needed. This film would have been great, and it could have been would have still been a great film if it was just a very serious, dramatic performances that you get from everyone else without Lil Rel Howery's character. But I think the humor that he does bring, at least for me, it does work very well. I do understand that there are a lot of movies that I don't want to say Get Out invented this. It's obviously there's hundred years of cinema history before this movie. There's obviously other examples of horror movies that have kind of the funny characters. I will say that probably post Get Out, there's a lot of movies that tried to copy that, and I do understand that sometimes humor can kind of undercut the tensions, or undercut the scares or whatever of a horror film. I don't think this is one of those examples where that happens, at least for me. Again, film is subjective to everyone. You can all have kind of a different take on that, and so maybe some people don't really enjoy the humor in this film, but I think for me, again, it works really well, especially with Lil Rel Howery's character, but also, just everyone. Multiple characters have very humorous moments. They have very funny scenes. Pretty much everyone at some point in the film is maybe not intentionally, cracking jokes, but like, they're delivering lines that are funny, and they're delivering it in ways that do bring those little chuckles. But Lil Rel Howery's character is the one that's really just bringing out the big laughs.
Hi, Rod.
You know you picked the wrong guy, right?
Oh, yeah, of course I know that. This is all just a ploy to get to you. It's not too late for us.
Okay, get your own girl. You know I'm mad at you because you never take my advice.
Like what?
Like, don't go to a white girl parents' house.
She doing licking your balls or something?
Yeah, bye.
You know what I'm saying, Chris?
Chris. This motherfucker hung up on me.
Obviously, while the humor is great and that is a strength of the film, there is one reason you're watching a horror film. And that is the tension and the scares of the film. Now, obviously, this isn't necessarily the scares per minute horror film, right? This isn't like, a James Wan film that, is going to have some of the, like I still think of obviously the first Insidious movie has one of the just, I mean, it's kind of universally accepted as one of the greatest scares of all time. There's so many of those type of films that they have those intense scares. Get Out isn't necessarily that film that has so many just scares per minute, but what it does is it gives you kind of uncomfortable scares, and it gives you tension-packed scenes. And again, this is one of those films where, again, in the trailer especially, they used kind of a lot of those scenes in the trailer to kind of sell you on like, ooh, something's off-putting here. But they didn't give you the full scares. They didn't give you like the spoiler stuff. They kind of gave you the stuff to make you uncomfortable and really make you just, again, uneasy about, what is happening in the film. And then this is one of those reasons why I think for me the humor, I think, again, kind of going back to the humor a little bit, I think why it works so well is because the humor and the tension, one of them doesn't overshadow the other, one of them doesn't completely kill the other. I think that they're both used very well to kind of just enhance one another. And again, this is one of those films that the first time I saw it, obviously I was very tense, I was very nervous. It's one of those films you can't really get a good grasp of exactly where the film is going, but you're just kind of, you're just that level of uncomfortable, you're that level of on the edge of your seat, just watching in anticipation to kind of get to the resolution or to figure out exactly what is happening in this film. And that just creates such a beautiful environment. And again, that is one of those things where I think it's the first time you watch the film, obviously it's kind of the best. It's one of those, I think, a lot of films where if it relies on you not necessarily knowing what's happening, obviously with each additional watch the film is going to take a little bit of a step back. But for me, Get Out is one of those films that even when I know what is happening, I can still appreciate so much of the tension and the craft behind that. I can understand what they're setting up, and it still creeps me out when I rewatch it. And I've rewatched this film, oh man, I don't even want to take a guess, at least probably 15 to 20 times at this point in my life over the last 7-8 years. And so it's just with each additional watch of this film, I kind of am getting to that point of like, obviously I know exactly what's happening, I know what's going on, but it's like I appreciate, and I can put myself back in thinking about that first time that I saw this in theaters. I can look back and I can appreciate kind of the way that the tension was used and how it built to kind of the climax really of the film. And the other thing that I really want to take a second here to give a quick little shout out to, a quick little appreciation for, is the music and the score of this film. This is one of those that the first time you watch it, there are you notice it, you notice the music especially, and you notice that the score is kind of creepy, but it's one of those just with additional rewatches of this film and just kind of listening to that score, you really kind of get into this point of it's a beautifully kind of the plucky string chord that it adds so much to the film. It adds to that tension. The score, I should mention, is Michael Abels is the composer here of this score, and it's just an excellent job. It just really adds to the atmosphere and adds to the vibe of the film. But then I also, you do still have to kind of give some credit to the songs. Obviously, there isn't really as many songs. They're kind of right at the beginning. Really, it's both Redbone and by Childish Gambino, and then the Run Rabbit Run song that's kind of in the opening scene of the film. Those will get stuck in your head, and I constantly am still finding myself just doing the Run Rabbit Run, and just getting that kind of music, that iconic, the way it puts in the scene, the way it kind of is just again creating the atmosphere. if the music and the score is that big of a standout, you know that that is just another additional thing that's just really, again, just going into this film's favor, because it's one of those things where it's just every single category, at least for me, is it's all clicking. The screenplay, the directing, the acting, the score, the costume, everything is all coming together here, and it's just creating a perfect film. And so for me, it's just again, on additional rewatches, I've learned. I don't want to say I've learned. I loved it from the get-go, but I've learned to just like really love this score. And it's probably one of my favorite, kind of film scores, just because of what it did for the tension of the film and creating that atmosphere. And so kind of like what I've done with my with my Becoming a Better Cinephile series, I kind of want to end these videos or end these reviews by doing the two things, kind of answering those questions. The first one, what's the rating of the film? Obviously, this is a 5 out of 5 star movie. For me, I haven't even really fully explained my love for this movie. I guess maybe this is the perfect point to kind of pause and really kind of explain this, how much I love this movie. This is what when people ask what my favorite movie of all time, it's hard to say. It's hard to really give one. This is kind of the default answer I go to. This is my favorite movie of all time for a couple reasons. Again, obviously, I just think it's a great movie, but then it is one of those movies I talk about. I mentioned, and we'll talk about this more in this series, of 2019 kind of being that year that I really fell in love with going to the movies and going going to the theater. This film, Get Out, in 2017 was one of those first real experiences I had of like kind of just loving movies. At this point in my life, I had seen, I go to the theater every now and then with some buddies or whatever, but I kind of exclusively watched two genres. There was like two genres of film that I watched, and one of them was dumb comedies, and one of them was bad horror films, and that was kind of that's what I watched. And this is one of those first films that I remember watching, loving it, and then just being like, oh, like, horror movies can be really good. Prior to this, I'm sure I had seen a couple good horror movies, but it was a lot of kind of the commercial, the kind of the very popular horror movies were the ones that I was seeing, and those aren't necessarily always the best representation of what this genre is. And so this, again, was one of those first films where I kind of recognized, like, oh, you can watch a horror movie that is just really well made, and it's just incredibly crafted, and it's really all put together, and it's a great story, as opposed to just you go and you get scared a couple times, you go home and you forget about the movie. And so this was one of those movies that I think just kind of woke up so much about my love of cinema. This was one of those that it's the film that I will forever say is kind of the film that really got me into cinema. It's the film that really got me into loving movies, but I also need to give it a lot of credit because it is kind of the movie that really got me into this space of YouTube reviews and commentary and breaking down things and kind of just talking about film in a way that isn't just you go see a movie with your buddies, you walk out of the theater, hey, I had a good time. Oh yeah, me too. That was pretty cool. Okay, let's go to a movie again next week, or let's see a movie again, or whatever, and then you leave, and that's the end of that. The movie's dead at that point. This was one of the first times where it's like I watched the movie and I picked apart some things. And again, the spoiler section is coming in a couple minutes. I will get into more of this kind of there, but this was one of those where I was watching things and I was like, ooh, that's kind of a little thing that they put in here that kind of came back. They called back to that in the third act. They kind of referenced this, or, oh, this is a thing they put in there, and I think this kind of represents this, or maybe this means this. And it was one of those films that I remember watching it, and I felt like I was like, oh, there is so much to discuss about this film. And kind of going home and really kind of getting onto YouTube and kind of getting into that that space of all of a sudden discovering the land of Chris Stuckman and Jeremy Johns and these people that have been on the space for on the platform for at this point 6, 7, 8 years. All of a sudden finding like, oh, there's people that have been doing this for so long. Like, this is such a cool thing. Like, this is such a cool way of again, of just being able to talk about movies, finding people to create these communities and talk about movies. And so that was kind of 2017 was kind of when that first started, of like, this is so cool to having this space. And now all of a sudden, what are we here, 7 years later now, where I'm finally kind of really putting myself into this space as well, and kind of creating some of these videos just to kind of create that same kind of environment. I loved what this film did for me, and kind of just opening up this whole side of YouTube movie commentary, reviews, reactions, all of that stuff. And so for me to just kind of fall in love with that is something that this film has done for me, that again, this is why I think film is there's so many different things that it can do for you, and so it's hard to always kind of say like, what is your favorite film? What is the best movie? But for me, I just think of how this film opened my eyes up to so many different things, not even just in the movie space, but in the YouTube space and just in film, commentary space. That's why for me, this will always probably be my favorite film. I have such a hard time seeing a film ever kind of replacing this for me because of all of those reasons that I've said. So again, this is a 5 out of 5 star movie. And the second question that I want to kind of put out into all of these is this going to stay in my Letterboxd 4? And for this, it is a hell yes. This is absolutely, like I just said, all of those reasons. It is locked into my Letterboxd 4. And for as long as I keep my Letterboxd 4, if I keep it kind of as a real, like, these are my 4 films, Get Out will always have a spot on that 4. I am totally open to, I have a good buddy that he, I don't know how often he does it now. Probably not at all. He's not super active on the app anymore. But what he used to do is during certain months, like during October, he would switch it to his 4 favorite horror movies. During February, he would switch it to his 4 favorite romance movies. Things like that. He would kind of switch up his Letterboxd 4, and maybe I'll do that someday. But for right now, as long as I'm keeping it as my legit, these are my 4 favorite films, Get Out will always have a spot there. Alright, and so that is the end of kind of the real review section of this film. So this is the point where if you have not seen Get Out, if you have not seen the movie, leave the video at this point and go and watch it, and then if you want, you can come back for this second spoilers section here of the video. So again, thank you for watching if you are leaving at this point, but for those of you who are staying, let's get into the spoilers section. And so obviously starting the spoiler section, the first thing that we got to talk about is acting part 2.
Whenever we'd go out, I remember you looking at me.
What the fuck you know? Chris is my best friend.
Hey, look, if you did something to him,
I know you think about fucking me, Rod.
ain't nobody thought about fucking you. Why would you say some stupid shit? What the? You ass, fuck you.
We're going to start with Allison Williams. I briefly mentioned her, in the first acting bit of this video, and I'm sure for you who have seen the video, you kind of know I was kind of bullshitting at that point, kind of talking about how great she was as his partner for Chris and the chemistry, because I mean that is how the film is set up. It is set up in a sense that you're following this romantic these two characters that are in love, and you're sticking with them, and you're gonna weather the storm that they're going through, and then obviously the reason that works is because of Allison Williams' performance. It is to the point that like you totally are buying into them, and you're buying into their relationship, you're buying into them sticking this out and being there for each other. And the key scene is the after again, I have to remember, this is the spoiler section. I can go all in and talk about this. The bingo scene where they're auctioning off Chris. As after that scene, you realize something really dark and sinister is happening there, and then it cuts to... And I think that is the first point for me where I'm thinking, okay, Rose is probably in on this. There's no way... Like, she's been acting really good. She's been kind of convincing Chris all about this, that she's, that she doesn't know what's going on, and she doesn't know why they're being weird. But once you see that that's happening, you kind of are realizing, like, okay, she probably brought him into this situation. And then it cuts to the scene of them where they're kind of just sitting on the bench, and Chris is talking about wanting to leave, and Rose is kind of saying, like, oh, you're going to leave without me, and you're kind of at this point, at least for me, when I was watching the film for the first time, I was kind of like, I'm not buying this anymore. I'm not buying her act. I'm not buying this shtick. I'm not buying what she's putting out there. And then she kind of that scene kind of finishes with her reassuring Chris that she is there for him, and that she's willing to leave. She's willing to leave with him. She says, I think her exact quote is like, "This sucks. Like, let's go home. Like, I'm sorry I brought you out here. Like, this sucks." And that scene, she does such a great job of kind of acting that scene where I instantly was like, oh, she isn't involved. She isn't a part of this. Like, oh my gosh, like let's let's go. Like like I can get back into rooting for them as a couple. I can get back into rooting for them as as characters. And then obviously you go back to the house. You can tell it's kind of creepy with Caleb Landry Jones kind of plucking that I believe it's a banjo that he's kind of just plucking on the porch there. You're kind of getting into this uncomfortable scene, and then for the next, I guess it's maybe like a 5-6 minute scene, Chris kind of goes into that closet, he's finding the photos, and all of a sudden that is where it's hitting you again, and you're like, oh, no. Like, at the last second, I was kind of like believing in her again, and then all of a sudden it's falling apart, and then just the absolute gut punch of a scene.
Where are those keys, Rose?
You know I can't give you the keys, right, babe?
And then while we're talking about the Armitage family, you got to talk about the rest of Bradley Whitford, Catherine Keener, and Caleb Landry Jones, their roles. And again, I talked about in the first part of this review of they're kind of creepy and they're off-putting, and something's going on there. But then it all starts coming out, and it all starts making sense there in the second half, and you really kind of you see kind of the things of like Bradley Whitford's character of kind of being the clumsy, awkward, goofy dad. You see Catherine Keener's character as kind of the little more stoic, kind of reserved, kind of back. I don't want to say necessarily say laid back, but just kind of the more quiet mom that is, constantly, tapping on her teacup. And then obviously you've got Caleb Landry Jones, who's just kind of the wild card, coming in wanting to wrestle, wanting to be physical with Chris, and you're getting all of this, and you're like, okay, this is all kind of weird. And then once the reveal happens and you understand what they're really about, they're still the same characters going forward. It's just now so much more about who they really are. And so it's one of those things where when you go back and you watch this film on additional rewatches, I should mention that's another reason why I love Get Out, is because it's one of the first movies that I was like I was dying to go back and watch multiple times. I don't want to say this was the first movie I ever saw multiple times in theaters. Actually, now that I think about it, I think the first movie I ever saw multiple times in theaters was probably Now You See Me, because I had to show that to a buddy that I didn't see it with the first time. But I think Get Out is maybe the first movie I saw like 5+ times in theaters, because it was like I had to show every friend I had. I had to be like, you got to come see this movie with me. You got to come see this movie with me. And so that's another reason why I love Get Out, is because it's one of those first movies that I was so inspired to just watch it multiple times, because once you get to these character reveals and the plot reveal, you go back and you want to rewatch those characters from the beginning, and you see that their mannerisms, you see that the off-putting nature of them is still there, but it makes sense when you know what they're really all about. You can see the reason Caleb Landry Jones is wanting to roughhouse and he's wanting to wrestle Chris as the scene, because he wants to put him in put him in a headlock and wants to put him out and already start start what they're doing. They want to sell him and for the highest bid and sell his body. And so like once you get to that point of what's really going on, the film I think just takes another level, another step for me. And then while we continue talking about the acting, there's 3 other people that I want to mention that I didn't mention in the beginning, because I kind of felt like just bringing them up was almost too spoilery. And that's the people that are kind of getting hypnotized: Lakeith Stanfield, Betty Gabriel, and Marcus Henderson. Who Lakeith Stanfield obviously in the opening scene, and then he's playing the relative that comes in, and then you've got Betty and Marcus, who are grandma and grandpa, but now are presenting themselves as kind of the hired help of the family. All 3 of them, they do an excellent job of, again, initially portraying, I guess Lakeith Stanfield, we'll talk about him first, because I think he's a little bit separate, because you see him at the beginning, so he's the one that he's kind of the piece to you where you understand that something's going on with Lakeith Stanfield's character. You understand that someone took him in the beginning of the movie, you see him come back later and he's acting totally different, so he's kind of the first piece where you're like, okay, something's happening here. Both Betty Gabriel and Marcus Henderson, obviously once you realize what's going on, it's very easy to tell exactly what's happening with them, but for the first however many times you meet them, you don't get that capture scene, or you don't get the surgery scene for them, so it's like you just see them as the help for the family, kind of the servants, you don't understand why they're acting so weird. You don't understand the way that they're talking doesn't sound right. They're putting, kind of the very, you can tell it's almost like a very old English that they're kind of speaking, and you're like, this isn't right. Like, you get that feeling with both of them, and again, they do an excellent job of kind of portraying, especially Betty Gabriel.
Do something.
That is like the first time where you can feel something is so wrong, the way that she kind of starts crying but is still talking, and that's the first time where you kind of get a sense of like she's acting two characters right now at the exact same time. She's acting out the character that we're seeing on screen, the grandma, the voice, the brain of the operation. You are understanding, like, you're getting that character, but then you are also getting her character that is stuck in the sunken place. You're getting her kind of breaking through with the tears. You can feel like there's two different people in that scene, and that's the first time. Like, it's just, again, phenomenal acting from Betty Gabriel. Marcus Henderson, he does a great job of kind of just making you a little more uncomfortable as the film's going on, and then obviously he gets kind of the big kind of scene at the end with when it's just kind of down to him, Chris, and Rose kind of on the road. He gets kind of a big moment there when he's kind of woken out of consciousness by Chris's cell phone. So there is kind of that moment there where he kind of gets to act out a little bit, but so much of what they're doing is just phenomenal acting of kind of playing two characters and playing two characters at the same time. So it's really impressive. And then the next thing I want to talk about is kind of the callbacks in this film. And this is one of those where I don't want to get too much into it, because, again, as I mentioned, this is the movie that made me discover YouTube film as like an entire community that exists. So I have watched a million videos on Easter eggs, things you didn't know, and 23 surprising, moments that, played into the, kind of telling you what's going on in the film that you didn't catch, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I've seen all of those videos, and honestly, I recommend you go and search those videos if you haven't. Like, it's a fun time, for me when I was discovering all those videos and seeing all these different things. But because of that, there's nothing that I'm going to say, in this section of, like, talking about the callbacks that, haven't already been said. So this isn't going to be one of those where I'm just going to start pointing out all of the different callbacks, but it's going to be just kind of talking about some of the ones that really kind of really stood out, and the ones that I think kind of make the film a little bit deeper. And I think honestly the easiest way to do that is by kind of showing you a couple different clips.
This black dude comes along, proves them wrong in front of the entire world. Amazing.
Tough break for your dad, though.
Yeah. He almost got over it.
She lay there bleeding by the side of the road, holding alone. That's how she died in the early morning, cold and alone. And I was watching TV. She lay there bleeding by the side of the road, holding alone. That's how she died in the early morning, cold and alone.
And then the final thing that I want to talk about in this video is, I guess, kind of a spoiler in the spoiler section. If you didn't know that there is an alternative ending to this movie, if you haven't, I'm not going to, again, as I mentioned, this is the spoiler in the spoiler section. I'm not going to talk about exactly what it is just because I want you to kind of go and experience it. If you own the movie that's on the DVD, but I'm like 95% sure you can find the alternative ending on YouTube. So that's another thing that I recommend if you love this film and you somehow just didn't know about the alternative ending to the film, I recommend going and watching that, because it's another layer, or another like kind of level of twist that really kind of shows you again the mindset of where Jordan Peele was when he was originally making this movie. I talk about how he was a visionary. He had a vision from start to finish of what this film was going to be. He had an original ending what he really wanted to do, and I think ultimately I sometimes wonder maybe if he kind of wishes he kind of had stuck with that ending, if he really had stuck with that. Again, obviously got a great film out of it regardless of which ending he used. But if you didn't know, I just recommend going and looking up. I believe it's on YouTube. You can probably find it on there, the alternative ending for this movie. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching the first episode here of this series of Finding My Letterboxd 4. Again, this is a high recommendation. If you haven't seen Get Out, I recommend you go and watch it. But at this point, like, everyone's seen Get Out, right? Like, it's one of those, I guess I don't know for sure if it's on, like, the Letterboxd 1 million reviews list or whatever, all those different things. I'm sure it is, because it's one of those, if you click on Letterboxd, there's kind of you can watch or click the tab of like movies that are most popular. Get Out is one of those, like, it's always up there. It's always near the top of that list. But yeah, so again, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it at this point. If you have any interest in seeing Get Out, you've seen it at this point. But if by some chance you haven't, go ahead and check the film out. And again, I talk about, like, in a lot of my videos, I talk about, when I get to the end of the video, I talk about, let me know of any other movies you recommend me seeing, kind of things in that here, like the Becoming a Better Cinephile series. I ask for other, classic films that I haven't seen. This is one of those series where I'm not really going to be asking for any recommendations, because this is just a series where I'm talking about my favorite films. And so obviously first episode here was Get Out. I talk about it as being like my favorite film of all time. Next video, I will tell you, hopefully within the next month or so, I'll get around to the next video in this series, and I'll just let you know now that it is going to be Greta Gerwig's Little Women from 2019 is going to be the subject of the next video. It's another one of those videos that it is, the more and more I've watched it maybe just about as much as I've watched Get Out, it is getting pretty close to that level of, like, Get Out and Little Women are kind of like my two favorite movies of all time. So just a little tease for what the next video in this series will be. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated, and I hope you have a great day.